don't think Bomb is Bomb, and I'm gonna explain why. The famous chapter, season 2, episode 240, the scene where we finally learn all about Arlene and V and Bomb's origins, has always stood out to me as super weird. There's something about the scene that has always rubbed me the wrong way, and it's the way that Garam talks about Bomb. The way that she talks about the baby in this scene has always been very shady and kind of separated. There's even a moment where Bomb says, "Oh, the baby, you mean," and he's about to talk about himself, and Garam says, "No, that baby died." And you could interpret this as Garam's a good storyteller, you know? She's trying to keep things interesting. And some people take this and run. They say like, "Oh, what if Rachel was the baby," right? And I think it's undeniable that the baby that was killed and, you know, all that stuff, it is Bomb, right? I mean, we see Jihad later say, "Oh, your eyes, I know those, I killed you before." And we know Edwin, like a lot of the characters, Gusting, they specifically recognize Bomb genetically. Like clearly, whoever Bomb is, he is connected to V and Arlene. But I do think there's a lot more going on than just baby was killed, baby was brought back, and that's Bomb. I think there's something more, and the main reason I think so is the very end of this couple chapters where Garam says, "I couldn't tell that boy the truth. I couldn't tell him the whole story. He may resent me later, but that's okay." Like she's willing to, something so big that it would shift Bomb's, it'd skew Bomb's perspective. She had to hide that fact. It was such an important detail that it would like change the way that Bomb views Garam or this situation in general. Combine that with Garam specifically stopping Bomb. Bomb was clearly going to say, "Oh, that baby, you mean me?" And she says, "No, that baby died." The entire scene, she's talking about the baby, the baby, the baby. The only time that she says "you" is when she says "you are the child in the prophecy," which is post-Bomb resurrection. So, okay, you know, maybe it's just weird translation, or maybe it's just weird wording. Maybe it doesn't actually mean anything. Maybe it's just the wording that SIU/Garam chose to use in that scene, but I feel like that's kind of a cop-out answer in my opinion, and it cheapens the impact of probably the most important scene/chapter in Tower of God. Combine this also with the fact that that same chapter, 240, when Garam tells this story about the prophecy, it then switches to Rachel, who thinks she's the one in the prophecy. And if it was like really cut and dry, like, "Oh, baby that was brought back was the original baby and that's the boy in the prophecy," then why would Rachel be like, "No, I'm the one"? The framing of the scene also just implies that there's clearly more going on than just cut and dry, baby is Bomb and prophecy is Bomb. That's it. Cut to another scene later during Hidden Floor when Rachel escapes from Bomb/Rack trying to kind of get revenge on Kuhn's death, quote unquote. We see that Rachel tells Bomb, "Arlene called you a monster." Right? Arlene thought of you/called you a monster. And this scene also stands out to me. I heard someone say, we were talking about this on stream the other day, someone suggested, what if Rachel was just saying that to piss off Bomb? And like, that would, like, sure, but from a storytelling perspective, what a lame answer to this question. This idea that Arlene considered Bomb a monster, or at least called him that at some point, is so fascinating, and it adds so much intrigue to the mystery of Arlene, and for the answer to just be, "Nah, she didn't say that, that was just Rachel making it up." What a poor storytelling decision that would be, right? Plus, Arlene, we do know, went a bit crazy. Her pocket, her diary info, it started to become like nonsense. And even Garam was like, "Damn, Arlene was a bit of a psychopath." So like, it's not even that crazy to think that she could have called Bomb a monster. But it does beg the question why she called Bomb a monster. Is she just going a bit crazy? Was it just a result of paranoia? That could have influenced it, but I think there was a very specific reason she called Bomb a monster. And it's because Bomb isn't her son. Let me be very clear about this. I am not trying to say that the flesh, the body of Bomb, is not the flesh or the body of Arlene's son. But whatever Bomb himself is, the soul, spirit, like souls exist in Tower of God, whatever Bomb's soul is, or whatever he's made up of on the inside, that isn't Arlene's son. it calls back to the story and the way that Garam was describing it, how she was being very vague. She never said, that child was you, right? That child they had all those years ago, that was you. She said, no, that baby died. Then later said, you are the child in the prophecy. There's a weird phrasing from Garam, and the way she handles this situation is so delicately worded, but there's a lot more to it than that. If Bomb was brought back, but the soul of the baby wasn't there, it's not the same child on the inside, then it could explain how maybe after some time, Garam realizes, oh, this deal wasn't what I thought it would be. When has there ever been in a story a situation where this like god who is like ruling over this kind of like area, the world or whatever the outside god is like, oh yeah, sure, I'll bring him back for no reason, where there was no deal, there was no like scheming going on? This is Tower of God we're talking about. There had to have been some kind of trick going on, some kind of like deal that was made, that when Arlene realized what had happened, she realized that the deal wasn't what she had wanted. You could say that maybe Arlene offered up her life, and that was the deal that the outside god made. That's too cliche for me. That's a little too straightforward. I feel like a so much more interesting answer would be that Bomb was brought back, but not as the actual true child that was killed on the floor of death, especially because, if you think about it, that child was killed so long ago, probably years, and the body was just preserved. We know it was preserved through some kind of spell from Arlene, perhaps. But if the child really was killed all the way back then, was the soul preserved as well? Like, I know the outside god might be like an Axis and is clearly very powerful, but did the outside god like go into the tower, snatch up Bomb's soul, and then bring it back outside? Like, that to me is kind of far-fetched. Like, can the outside god just snap his fingers and all of a sudden the soul wanders back into Bomb's body? Like, souls are a canon thing in Tower of God, and I feel as though maybe Bomb's soul wasn't there. And so the outside god just stuffed Bomb's body with something else. More specifically, the outside god. The outside god, the power of the outside god, energy of the outside god, a new life form created by the outside god, whatever it is, I feel as though Bomb was brought back with something else inside of him, and I think we see a lot of clues that hint towards this. Right away, this is very reminiscent of Yura's backstory. If you don't remember, I'll keep it brief. Yura's mom could only have one of her two twins. She was pregnant with two twins, and because of the cursed people thing, there's a whole video I'll link here, because of that whole thing, she could only have one. So what she did was she cloned herself. She kind of sent a part of herself to the hidden floor, that whole cloning, you know, sending data of herself there. The data of herself had the boy, and the outside version of herself, the normal version, had the girl Yura. So the one that had the boy on the hidden floor had the child, but then Huang, the big breeder, inhabited the body of the child so that he could have like a mom. It was kind of, it's a little weird, right? But then the mom, years later, looks at Huang inside the boy's body and finally realizes, you're not my son. It's like this mother's intuition, right? Like, even though she didn't know her child, like she didn't know the personality of the true child, she just knew, you're not the son that I had, like on the inside. Sure, you have the body, you look like my son, I've raised you, right? But you are not actually my son. It gives a lot of those vibes. So maybe it's not like gonna be an exact copy of that, but my point being, SIU's done this kind of plot before. And this could also set up Enryu as a future ally of Bomb, being that they're both like emissaries or maybe even creations of the outside god. That might even explain, like, the thorn itself is just outside god power. And that's why only Bomb is able to like kind of use this. And it's like, it's Enryu's thorn, but what's Enryu? Just an emissary of the outside god, which maybe that's also just what Bomb is, an emissary or creation of the outside god. There's this like big brain scheme going on with like outside god Bomb creation, Enryu, the thorns, etc. But if I was to take this a step further, I would say that what if Bomb is just, like I said earlier, actually just the outside god? Like, actually just a reincarnated, almost isekai'd outside god. Like, what if, imagine the outside god is the Axis of Tower of God. Like, the outside god is just straight up the author of Tower of God. We know that Axises, they are writers, authors of the universe, right? They're storytellers, essentially. They're the gods of this entire universe, and anything within the tower is just an ant compared to whatever power they wield as, like, authors. So what if this outside god is literally the author, storyteller of Tower of God, But after crafting and creating the tower and all the administrators and watching it grow and, flourish a bit, what if this outside god was like, I want to experience it myself? It's almost like if you're an author and you want to enter your own world. Who hasn't wanted that? You create this really interesting, fascinating story, it's fantastical and magical and awesome. Or you're playing a video game even, and you want to truly, like, if you were given the choice, you would be a part of that world in an instant. What if the outside god wanted to experience his own story? And so when V and Arlene brought back this boy, that was his moment where he sent himself into Bomb's body. I feel as though the biggest hint to this is that Bomb is able to, let me pose the question to you. What is Bomb able to do that every other irregular cannot do? Or what is Bomb's shtick? Right, so like Yurik as an irregular, we've seen him do these certain abilities and stuff, and every other family head, they have these like things. What does Bomb have? What is Bomb's ability that sets him apart? I'm not talking about the thorn, I'm talking about the ability to do anything that he wants. Bomb's unique irregular ability that's never directly been explained is that he can copy every single ability in the entire tower. I'm talking Love's, blue ore ability, Quant's reverse flow control ability, Jinsung hitting him with the floral butterfly piercing technique, even Yurik Mizuno's attack. SIU explained that Bomb did copy it, but he's kind of embarrassed about the name and that's why he doesn't use it. Bomb can learn essentially every single ability in the game, if we're thinking about it like that. He's Mew. Bomb is the Mew to Tower of God. I guess Mew is kind of the god of Pokemon, whatever. The tower is literally the outside god's ecosystem in this situation, like almost like watching fish in an aquarium. We have all these aquatic references. We've tried to explain what they could mean. This is another possible answer. Maybe this is literally like being an aquarium in his room. This is an aquarium and all the fish are swimming around, but now all of a sudden people are in there and they're trying to get out of the aquarium, and maybe that's what's at the top of the tower. You leave the tower, that theory we've always talked about. I don't know. It kind of works. I can kind of see it. The outside god is canon. We have no idea who he is. We have no idea who Pentaminum is and why he approached Jihad and did what he did. But maybe Pentaminum is like a rival author to the outside god. What if Pentaminum is some kind of like, how every story, they have the main antagonist, but almost always the main antagonist isn't truly who you think it is? What if Pentaminum ends up being sort of the overarching true antagonist of Tower of God as this sort of rival author of Bomb, who is the outside god? You see this all the time with manhwa stories too. I mean, like, you look at God of High School, I guess spoilers for the first, arc of God of High School, where it's like, oh, the ordinary person who's really skilled and has these abilities is actually God. Actually just like the god of this universe or a god of this universe. I feel as though it's kind of a trope you see a lot of the time as well. And I know we might not want to see Bomb, gaining even more power and recognition, but in this case, I feel as though it'd be really interesting because Bomb could go through an arc where he separates himself from the outside god. Like, no, I'm not that, whatever that was. I'm now my own person, which might even be what the outside god wanted in the first place before entering Bomb. This does lead, though, to a lot of questions, I think the biggest of which being Rachel and Bomb in the cave. How in the world did that even end up happening? There's a lot of panels of like Rachel and talking about what exists outside the cave and the world, and we see this panel of Rachel being like bullied by someone or attacked by someone. There's a lot of things that aren't explained here. But if Bomb was given the name 25th Night, because Bomb just means night in Korean, so his name is 25th Night, like his name is Night, right? What does that mean? Well, it could hint at some kind of connection between perhaps he isn't actually the outside god, and he's actually just like, again, power of the outside god. We know that Enryu can create life, and Enryu is an emissary of the outside god. Perhaps the outside god also just generated Bomb. Bomb is like a generated life form within the body of the son of V and Arlene. And perhaps he's the 25th of these creations, or it's kind of like Mixeth with Mai and Max. You talk about all the artificial life forms that Mixeth has created. There's kind of a connection between there, and Mixeth is the father of everything, And there's so much here. I'm losing my mind. Or it could be a reference to how many times Bomb has died and come back. What if the bomb in the cave was the 25th attempt at this outside God plan, whatever it is, and this main character we've been following is like the 25th trial. Maybe Rachel has raised other ones? Oh God, that is terrifying to think about. Or maybe it was like a difficult thing or like a momentous day when he was brought back. And so Rachel like commemorates that day as the 25th, which is of course a Christian reference to the day that Jesus was born, the 25th of December. So the day that the outside God is born within Bomb, whether it's him or his power, 25th, it all makes sense. My final point is this. Rachel thought of the tower when talking to Hedon and everything as a fairy tale world. Some kind of fairy tale with fairies and adventures, and it was all contained within a book. She specifically references a book. This all gives me, it gives me a vibe of, again, outside God being an author, which is already weird, and maybe the tower isn't like a literal structure on the outside, or if it was, it kind of represents the story and you could like enter the storybook. But maybe even more than that, it's almost as though it's Narnia. That's the best example I can think of, like this almost parallel imaginary world with Santa Claus, but you know, it's like, oh my God, Santa Claus exists in Narnia. Oh, but there's also like death and destruction, and like, but they enter Narnia and then they come back out and it's like no time has passed. So I wonder as though if maybe it was a similar situation with Arlen, where it's almost like it's a separate fairy tale storybook world, right? And it's almost impossible to leave, but you can. We don't know how Arlen left, but you can leave. And when you come back, it's like, oh, there's the storyteller, the author of that parallel universe, that storybook universe. It directly connects to Rachel in the storybook. I don't know. Am I crazy? Don't answer that. Thank you so much for watching. I would absolutely love to see your thoughts in the comments below, whether you agree with me or heavily disagree with me, you want to add context or whatever else. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Until next time, my friends, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.